Hello and welcome to the Alpha Weekly webinar. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Thomas Johnson from Champalimaud Design. Hello, Thomas. It's so nice seeing you.
Good. Nice to see both of you again. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You look very well as always.
Thank you.
Thomas, where are you today and how is your 2020 going so far? It has been a crazy year for a lot of people, but I would like to know how is it going for you?
I'm currently in Walnut Creek, California, which is in the East Bay, across the bay from San Francisco. 2020 has been a challenge, I think, for all of us. I've been traveling, doing business development my entire career. So in the last 8 months, I've had one trip to New York, and that was it. We've had a couple of small earthquakes. We've had huge fires. We've had COVID. We've had the global economy in shock. The list is so long, it's kind of, you just wake up and you hope you're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of forget everything else because there's just a lot of calamity going on, as we all know.
And you just count on the calendar to see when the year is going to be over. Enough of this.
You think it's going to be over. You're not sure when, but you think it's going to be over.
Yeah, no, but let's hope that the next couple of months of this year and next year are going to be much better.
We're always optimistic.
So yes, we're always optimistic. You already said that you do business development for Champalimaud, but I would love to know about your background and how did you get involved in the design industry?
Going back a long time, I grew up on a golf course in North Carolina, and it started me as a landscape architect. I went to school for landscape architecture. My first career was in land planning and golf course design. A lot of that was in Asia. So as I call it, my first career, that lasted up until about 9/11. Traveling the world, doing business development, doing golf course design, master planning resorts. So I've been in the design career my entire career, basically. And then I had a switch in careers around 2003, 2004.
And what was the switch?
Well, the golf industry and the land planning in Asia went down. We had an Asian currency crisis. Japan went down, and then 9/11 in the US. So I got introduced into doing just business development and interior design down in Santa Monica, and have been doing that ever since. So I've been the second career, as I call it, 16, 17 years of
That's
global
amazing.
business development, interior design.
So we at Alpha are huge fans of the work you do and the work of Champalimaud. But for those who don't know, can you talk a little bit about the company, like just a brief overview?
I call us an elite interior design firm based in New York. We have just one studio in New York. We've been at it, Alexandra started the firm about 40 years ago. So we're well established and we're well known. We do luxury interior designs for hotels, also for multifamily residential and for private residential. So we stay basically in those three spaces. And luckily, we've been able to work around the world. So last year, we reopened the Raffles Hotel in Singapore, which is an iconic hotel. It's kind of part museum, part national landmark, and part hotel. So our brand has carried us to many exciting places.
No, that's so incredible. It's fantastic. Thomas, what is it about this work that you like the most? And can you maybe talk about a project that is closer to your heart, that you remember dearly? So some of your favorite moments, I guess.
Being in business development, I actually enjoy the competitive part. There's about 20 firms I'd say around the world that we run into and compete with on a regular basis. A lot of people in the industry I've noticed don't keep in touch with their competition, but I try to. I know several of my counterparts at other firms, and you connect with them when you can in London or New York or LA or wherever they may be. Going back to the Raffles in Singapore, I visited this property in 2014, and it was incredibly in bad shape. It hadn't been touched in 30 years. The palm trees in the back of the property were dead. The tiles in the floor were cracked. The aura of that iconic hotel had evaporated due to neglect. Then we were able to work with our client, Katara Hospitality, and we did an extensive restoration and renovation. And you can see some of the photos right now. And now it's back to maybe the most famous hotel in Asia. It's an iconic property. It's a landmark. It's a statement hotel for the country of Singapore. It's just a wonderful 140-year-old restoration of where that property needs to be.
No, this is really fantastic. And I think if we could draw a comparison to art, it's like restoring a beautiful artwork that got appreciated with time. So seeing that come to life again with its full potential must be really rewarding. So now let's talk about some of like the not so good points about the work. What is it that like you don't like that much, or some of the obstacles or things that you would do different if you could?
A lot of firms will say that, oh, we live on existing clients and our clients always call us back. I find that true to about 50% of the time. So the typical service firm like ours, you always need to be in touch with your existing clients, but you always have to be on the search for new clients. And, you know, with websites and the internet, those clients can find us, but you still need to make some kind of personal connection with them. And that's where travel comes in. So the first 3 months of COVID, excuse me, were okay staying at home, but the last 5-6 months of COVID, you can feel the need to get on the road to meet these clients. So that connection, yes, we're doing Zoom and Teams calls around the world, but a lot of these clients just want to say hello to a service firm that's halfway around the world, and you know, we'd like to know you better. So we're missing that connection to a certain extent these days.
So, Thomas, I would love to know now something more related to the art that you place in some of the projects you've been involved. I know you don't do that personally, but like, can you talk a little bit more about the process of selecting artworks that go into properties?
Well, we do, as a design firm, we do a lot of commercial hotels. And as both of you know, we see the painful end that art ends up being some of the last selections. I would estimate that 1 out of every 10 hotel properties, art is vital to what the owner is trying to accomplish. The other 9 that I just bypassed, it's just part of the commercial venture of finishing the project. So it's nice to see on that 10-15% of the properties where art is critical. It's some of the first things that you notice when you go into a property and see it in a hotel. Yes, it is kind of a shame that it doesn't become more predominant in the design of the hotel. But every now and then you get that special property where you can tell that the artwork is the dominant theme of the interiors of the hotel. And it really does make it special. So the work that Alpha A does, trying to bring in new artwork and new concepts, I think is fantastic. So if you can do that on a global basis and provide that service to a variety of hotels with a new, fresh look. I hope both of you are very successful at it.
Mhm. Yes, and then following this line, thinking about art and culture, and you mentioned before that Champalimaud works in several different continents. What do you think is the role of those different cultures when influence the design or the final product of what you're creating? How can you see that difference? And can you give us perhaps an example?
Sure, I think every design firm, even at different levels of budget, but in the luxury design world especially, we try to get a sense of place. You know, Miami is different than San Francisco. San Francisco is different than Tokyo, on and on. So we all, I think, are cognizant of where we are. The first impression I got of it, I was probably in my 20s, and I got to visit Taliesin in Wisconsin, which is, and as you walk through that property, you can tell exactly why he did everything that he did. All the materials, all of the touches, just the art sensitive to the site that he was building on, what he was trying to accomplish, and kind of his statement of this is how we should build in rural Wisconsin. He was basically building on a hilltop in the middle of a farm that his family had bequeathed to him. But early on, you get a sense of why designers try to follow a theme or a scheme into what they're doing. So Taliesin East is in Wisconsin, Taliesin West is out in Arizona, but it was a good calling card, I guess you could say, into how the design world should approach every single project.
Great. Now we're approaching the end, so I want to know about what do you see for the future? You know, some trends, or how do you see your work developing and the work of Champalimaud, and perhaps in a broader perspective, design?
Short term, as we get through COVID, I think the stronger firms, the well-known firms like Champalimaud will do well. We'll be the first to come back. I'm worried about the industry as a whole, a variety of other firms. And another thing that I'm quite interested in is COVID has been very damaging or very difficult for your gender, more so than men. Single mothers, people trying to work from home. Currently in the US, there's 100 million men in the workforce and there's 100 million women. There's predictions that we could lose 20 million women from the workforce. And where that impacts us is interior design is traditionally about 65% female. So the impact on our industry could be severe. We don't really know yet how that's going to play out. But COVID has been a challenge for everybody, but especially for working parents and working mothers and single mothers. A variety of issues have popped up already. In the article that I read in the New York Times, when someone like you leaves the workforce, they leave for 7 to 9 years, which is a third of a career. So it's a big deal. The other thing that I see is I travel a lot in hotels. Hotel rooms, I think, are going to continue to get more simple or simpler, whichever the best term is. I think the complicated technology and complicated design that has taken over a lot of guest rooms will continue on its curve downward towards less formality. Look at the changes in menswear in the office environment. It's just incredibly less formal and less effort, for a certain sense, compared to 20, 30, 40 years ago. So in one generation, office attire has changed drastically, and I think the hotel guest room is going to do the same. I think you're going to see not bare bones, but you're going to see a less complicated environment in the hotel guest room.
more function than anything else.
Much more, yes.
No, let's see. That definitely makes a lot of sense, but let's hope that we continue seeing beautiful designs too.
Beautiful designs and maybe, but the artwork needs to be a big part of it. So
Mm-hmm.
of art, because
As
that's
long as we
kind of
still have artworks on
we
the
are.
walls. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So now just to wrap it up, Thomas, can you talk about maybe a book you've read recently or a movie, something that kept you inspired?
There's a book, a historical book called The Guns of August, and it's written about the reasons of having World War One, the big war
Mm-hmm.
that was in Europe in about 100 years ago in the 1917, 18. And there was a whole bunch of new technology invented in the Industrial Revolution. So all of these guns and tanks and all of the armaments were new. The people running the armies throughout Europe were from the 1870s and 1880s. They were from a different era. So you had people in charge, and all of the new toys, everything that they were implementing was brand new, and they didn't know how to use them. There was operator error every single day. Now you go 100 years later in certain countries around the world, and you see people with ideas of running a country from a different era. And it is almost impossible to take a society and go backwards. You can only evolve in one direction, which is forward. You can do that in certain chunks at a certain speed, but you cannot evolve backwards. And I think we've been seeing that in some of our political environment. So the Guns of August is a historical example 100 plus years ago, but it explains why you have to have leadership that is up to date, for lack of a better term. It was very painful. World War I didn't resolve anything. World War I, as most of us know, actually caused World War II, which was 25 years later. But to see the mistakes that people made, many of them in their 70s and 80s, trying to conduct warfare with new armaments was a disaster.
Yeah. So not to get too political, but let's see if leadership in our country is gonna take a different path in the next week.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. It's an important week next week, needless to say.
Needless to say. Well, Thomas, thank you so much. It has been amazing learning more about your work, and we're happy to share all of those great stories and beautiful projects with our audiences. And for those who are watching, stay tuned. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.